Hello and welcome to the Philippines. This video is about the Philippine expat experience from arrival to some level of comfort. I'm going to give you some tips based on my experience. I've been here 6 years and the experience of many expats who have shared some of their experiences with me. So I hope to give you some insight into the Philippine culture that you're going to be dealing with here and give you a certain comfort level before you come here. After you come through customs at the airport, money, of course, is going to be one of the first things you're going to have to deal with. Whether you get on a bus, a taxi, or some other transportation from the airport, you're going to need to pay in Philippine currency, pesos. And you've got what I suggest you do is learn what the exchange rate is and what it will buy in your currency. Get used to it. You've got the 20 peso bill, you've got a 20 peso coin on the right bottom. You've got a 100 peso bill, you've got a 500 peso bill, about $10 US. You've got a 50 peso bill, upper right, about $1, 200 peso, about $4, and 1,000 peso, about $20. Now with a favorable exchange rate, it's $1 is worth a little more than that at present time. And then on the bottom you've got you've got the 20 peso coin, 10, 5, 1, and centavos. Now if you exchange US dollars or other currencies at the airport, money exchange places, be sure to get some smaller bills as well, because you'll find taxis and other people you're going to be dealing with will tell you that, sir, ma'am, I don't have any change, and you'll end up giving a very large tip. My experience with taxis here in the Cebu metropolitan area is that I can go from Ayala Mall, Cebu City, over to the airport for about 300 pesos or so, depending upon traffic, about $6 US. That is a white taxi. I'll get a little more into other modes of transportation shortly. Transportation is the next thing you're going to have to deal with, and many options. Taxis, Grab company. We don't have Uber here. In taxis, you've got white taxis, which are your lowest price. You've got yellow taxis, which are airport taxis, and they they generally run about twice as much. But like I've said before, I've spent $1,000 or whatever on the plane. I've spent 25, 35 hours in airports and on planes. It really doesn't matter to me. I want to get to my destination. If I have to pay $4, $5, $6 more to get to where I want to go. And then you've got the executive taxis, usually black, and they cost a little bit more also. And the yellow taxis cost double because they generally are dedicated to the airport, and they go back to the airport empty in most cases, so they have to cover those transportations. You've got some buses at the Cebu airport. My bus is one of the companies. I think there's another company or two that runs out of there. Trains, you've got trains up in the Manila area, and they are not connected to the airport yet, is my understanding. And it's a little tricky getting to the train, and they can be packed full as well. You've got V-hires, which are vans, 12 to 15 person vans for hire that will take you to various destinations. Of course, other planes if you're flying to another domestic place. Tricycles and hobble motorbike taxis are another option as well. Or you can rent a car. There are car rental places at the airport as well. Your destination really will determine what type of transportation you're going to take. Dumaguete, for instance, if you're going to fly into Manila and then Dumaguete or Cebu Dumaguete, Dumaguete does not have taxis at this point in time, and so you're going to take a different mode of transportation. Looking forward to hearing from some of the comments. Please, those of you who've traveled, leave some comments, help us all out. Do they have vans to transport you into town or jeepneys out at the airport in Dumaguete? How about other cities? Davao City, I know when I flew into When I flew into Surigao City in northeast Mindanao, the hotel we were staying in had a van that picked us up there, so that might be an option as well. Be sure to ask your hotel or wherever you're staying. Another option in many places is to hire a car and driver or van and driver, depends on how many people there are, and your budget. And you can hire a driver for a day, a couple days, several days to take you around touring, whatever. And you can ask the better hotels usually have a list of those types of people, services, and that way, you know, they can recommend them. You've got some idea that they've used them before, and you're not going to get ripped off. Food can be another cultural shock. You know, there's a lot of rice and a lot of bread eaten by a lot of people here, but there's an enormous variety of food here. Filipino dishes, and that even vary by the various regions, how they cook it, some of their specialties and such. Along here where I'm walking, there's lots of little Filipino restaurants, and sometimes there's a big crowd outside. That means that it's either very good, they've got a big following, it's cheap, or they've got for some reason they've got them, but usually is a good sign anyway. And they've got these sari stores where you can buy little snacks and chips and that type of thing, and just a ton of little restaurants down here. By the way, I'm walking from IT Park, which is a big business center park, and here's a internet cafe in Cebu City, and I'm walking to Ayala Mall in the Cebu Business District along here. You have public markets where you have a vast variety of various sizes, a lot of variety, different types of fruits and vegetables and meats as well, and they're what they call a wet market. Lots of fish almost any place you go, because of course all these islands are surrounded by the sea. If you live in the larger cities, Dumaguete, Iloilo, Bacolod, Davao, Baguio, Cebu City, Manila, of course, you have many more choices than if you live out in the province, the cities and towns out there. You might have a Jollibee and McDonald's. You might have a little bit more, but generally you're going to have less variety out there unless you cook yourself. I know a number of expats who live on other smaller islands. They come to Cebu once or twice a month to load up on goods at like S&R, which is like a Costco here, S&R or Landers, or some of the other supermarkets. Things they can't get back on their island, Camotes Island, which is part of Cebu province. I was told a few years ago that they process a beef once, I think, early Sunday morning, I think he said. So if you're not down there early, you aren't going to get any beef that week. It's also very common to only be given a fork and a spoon as your utensils to eat, regardless if you've got meat or whatever your dish is. And without a knife can be a little bit challenging, but I have learned to use that. Some places will give you a knife if you ask one. It's also not uncommon to eat with your hands like they do in many countries. Eat the rice and various parts of the meal with their hands without utensils. So don't be surprised if you see that, and join in if you wish. Housing such as apartments, condos, and homes can also be a very new experience here in the Philippines. Lease arrangements and such are often different. If you're short-term, you're probably going to use a site like Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, a number of other sites like that, TripAdvisor. They all have short-term rentals. Long-term rentals, 6 months or greater. Like in the cities, you have a lot of condominiums, high-rise condominiums. You have housing developments. gated housing developments and non-gated housing areas where you can find places to rent. Filipinos are some of the most well-networked people in the world, so ask Filipinos about places. They know somebody who knows somebody who has a place for rent, probably. And the same goes for if you need to move goods and that sort of thing. Now, in the U.S., I don't think I ever rented, and I moved quite a number of times in the U.S., across towns and across states. I think I always bought and furnished my own apartments and home. I did own one home for a while, and I don't remember ever buying a furnished or partially furnished or renting a place. So I had to make a choice of selling my furniture if I wanted to move long distance, or paying quite a bit of money to rent a rental truck and move that furniture to a new location. Here in the Philippines, and that building we were just looking at on the right, that is Avenir. It's marketed as a business condominium, but they have residential units in there as well. And you can find, you know, it depends on what you're used to. Many Westerners and some Asians are used to much larger spaces, so you come here and find, gee, you know, these apartments and condominiums are really very small, and they downsized things 8, 9, 10 years ago with big demand, trying to fit more people into the same space, basically.
Hello.
This is mostly a cash society still, and I didn't mention that when I talked about money, but cash is king. You know, they're going to more digital, where you put money on things like Gcash and a number of Maya, lots of places to put prepay cash onto cards and use those to pay for things. But paying for rent will usually be done in cash, and I went to the bank. Two landlords gave me deposit tickets. I went to the bank, deposited the amounts into their checking accounts. Some will ask for 6 months or 12 months of post-dated checks, so they'll have those. I've had 2 or 3 leases and a couple of verbal agreements. Read your lease, understand what you're signing. If you don't have a lease, I would suggest that you write down your agreement, basic items, who's going to pay for repairs, for instance. If something breaks, I was going to rent from one guy, a foreigner actually, and he sent me his lease, and basically it said that, well, if the refrigerator breaks anytime after you move in, you have to replace or repair the refrigerator. And that might be a 5-year-old refrigerator already, and it's not my fault that it stops working. I said, no, that's not going to happen. My experience has been that the landlord usually pays for general repairs. I've paid for a couple small ones, but I've been able to deduct some of those, like replacing. We have very hard water here in Cebu City, most of Cebu City anyway, and the valves underneath the sinks will get corroded, and water pressure will reduce because of the small size of the opening. And I've had to replace those valves about once a year in a couple different places, and you know, less than 1,000 pesos, less than 20 pesos to have somebody do that and buy the parts. And I've been able to deduct that off my rent. A couple other places, I've paid for some of the repairs. Getting the air conditioners cleaned might cost 800 pesos to 1,000 pesos every few months, and I've always had the landlords pay it. Presently, I am paying it where I stay now. Language, English, Filipino, Bisaya, Ilonggo, and dozens of other languages are spoken here in the Philippines. And I've done a previous video called Speaking English with English-Speaking Filipinos. Maybe I'll put a link to that. And you know, English here and around the world, as you know, you go to different parts of the USA, different parts of the UK, different parts of many countries, and the accent, are different, and sometimes it's difficult to understand people even in your own country. Well, come to a place like the Philippines, and they speak, you know, the national language. Filipino is a combination of Tagalog and some of the other languages. And a lot of people just call it Tagalog, and it's primarily Tagalog, I guess. But the English is the second language, and I think most, if not all, the legal documents are in English. But if people are not using, if you learn a language and you don't use it regularly, you start to lose it. I've even come across a guy from Switzerland or someplace over there, and he spoke English and German, I think, but he had learned French, but he said, I don't learn, I can't speak French anymore. I can understand a little bit of it, but I haven't used it for decades. The guy I stopped to talk to here is a Shopee. This is kind of like your Amazon delivery guy back in the USA, but it can take you, often takes me a week or longer to get something I order from Lazada, Shopee, the different places online here. I'll do another video about that soon. But anyway, a lot of people will understand your English to some degree, but they're not comfortable speaking English. And I have had a number of taxi drivers, and I usually sit up and talk to them, start a conversation. They'll say, no, my English is really bad, but I've had a pretty good conversation with many people who think their English is bad. And I've tried to have a conversation with some other people, and they just kind of like the deer in the headlights. They just kind of look at me with a blank look, don't know what I'm saying, or have no idea how to respond in English. The word usage of their English here can be different than what you're used to, so sometimes there can be some confusion. I often have to ask my girlfriend. I use a word and I says, do you understand that word? And she does, or she'll say, no, I don't. She'll kind of smile, and I'll say, well, do you understand what I just said? No, I don't. So then I'll have to explain, use another word to get the point across. And one of the most important items for many of you, internet availability, speed, and also cell phones and data. You know, it's a different world here and can be quite confusing. And when I first came here, I had bought an unlocked phone from T-Mobile, unlocked, and it had 2 SIM cards in it. And I put a SIM in it from I think Globe here. There's Globe and Smart are the 2 big companies. Smart is owned by PLDT, a couple of other companies as well, but they're the major ones. Dito is a new one that's come onto the scene here in the last year to give some competition. There is cellular, I mean internet, there's more and more fiber optic, but it really depends upon the area. More and more buildings are getting it. In the last 6 or 7 years, a lot of the buildings have fiber optic in Cebu City area. Well, it really depends upon the area in your building, so you have to find out.
Smells good.
Tons of these little neighborhood cafes, I guess you call it. But basically, you need an unlocked phone. If your phone is locked to a cellular service in your country, it will not work here. So you need an unlocked phone. You need to put in a SIM card from one of the phone companies here. It will give you and then you need to put load on it. You need to put credits on it. You buy those from any locations, including 7-Eleven. You can buy a card, do it yourself, or just go to one of those loading stations and have them give them your phone number, and they will load. You'll give them money, they will put load on your phone. At the present time, I don't think they allow dual SIM phones in the US. Well, you can have a dual SIM, but you can only have one carrier at a time on one phone. There was a time many years ago where different companies in the US had better coverage in different areas that I traveled. I had 3 phones with 3 different carriers because I needed phone service where I was, and they didn't all have very good service in some of the areas. And you'll find that here. I've got a smart SIM and I've got a globe SIM on my dual SIM phone here. That's allowed. And I also have a tablet. I've got a DITO, D-I-T-O is the 3rd carrier here now. Now, I've had a number of people ask me over the years on I do a lot of videos about condominiums, and they said, well, check the internet speed. Ask about the internet speed. Well, the internet speed really, to a large degree, is up to you. You can buy different packages with different speed of internet. You know, you can buy when I first came here, my internet speed was like 3 megabytes per second. But you could buy the 5 megabyte, the 10 megabyte, the 20 megabyte, 30 megabyte, maybe 50 megabyte, whatever it was at the time. So, you know, you can buy into the service. Costs you a little more to get the faster speeds, of course. Shopping, different brands, warranties can be a bit of a shock here. The stores, shopping for clothes, for instance, they have different sizes here. And some of the shoes, for instance, will have like 4 different sizes from different parts of the world. I wear a medium shirt in the USA. Here I am extra large or even double extra large to get something to fit. And it's not because I grew that much. My pants in the US are 32 waist. Here 34, even 36 the other day. So it depends on the manufacturer. Best to try them on. I've heard that if you have big feet, you best bring your own shoes along. Tough to find larger size shoes is what I've heard. Brands in the grocery store and the language. A lot of the goods here come from China or the Middle East, and a lot of times, and the Koreans and Chinese are a big part of the tourist sector here, and you won't even find English on some of the packages, so you're just guessing. You won't know what it is on the shelf. Shopping for medicine, over-the-counter stuff can also be a challenge. You know, I'm used to buying a bottle of something, a package of something. When I first went to a pharmacy and I was looking for some antacids, and they said, well, how many do you want? I want one. I want like 1 bottle. You know, I just said just one, and she cut one piece off of a little foil package, gave me 1 pill. I said, no, I want all of them. She said, you can't have all of them. That's all we have. And you should know the generic instead of oftentimes if you're looking for medicine, know the generic term rather than the brand name of something, because they may not have that brand, but they may have something similar in a generic if you know the actual drug name itself. Best to write it down properly and show it to them, because I've found I try to pronounce some of these things and they don't understand. They'll type something in their computer and say, no, we don't have that. Well, you have something similar, and a lot of times we're out of stock, sir. And you hear that a lot. Well, do you have something similar? Oftentimes they're not aggressive in saying, hey, here's something similar, just a different name, different type. We'll do the same thing. Now this is about culture shock, adapting.
Hello.
I'm going to try to wind this up with all these last points: infrastructure, poverty, pollution and traffic, a little bit of chaos. In the end, I love the Philippines. I love the friendly Filipino people, helpful, friendly. And I've added another video on here walking over in Mandawi, as I'm right here at Ayala Mall, one of the entrances here. But I've been here almost 7 years, 3 different trips, and I've seen a lot of changes in the 7 years. Infrastructure-wise, has long ways to go here in Cebu City, but there's infrastructure going on around the nation. Manila, in Luzon, even in Mindanao, there's railroad planned, additional railroads planned. Angeles, New Angeles City, is it called, up there? We've got a brand new third bridge going from South Cebu City metropolitan area over to Cordova on Mactan Island. Got a long ways to go, and I'm seeing more and more drainage pipe being put in, and some of the wires, the spaghetti wires that are hanging above ground, some of those are being put underground, but a long ways to go. Now, these last over 2 years of economic lockdown because of this virus has devastated the economy of the Philippines and their tax base, obviously. No tourism. Millions of businesses shut down, some permanently, so they've lost a big part of their tax base. Their income taxes, people didn't have jobs, are not making money, not paying taxes. Tourism is not here. So I don't know how they're going to go forward and pay for some of these infrastructure projects, if they're going to be delayed, if they're going to be canceled, or what. But anyway, life goes on, and I think the Philippines has a lot to offer, tremendous potential. Hopefully they'll take advantage of that, open up the country, allow the tourists back in, like so many countries already are, without any restrictions. As far as poverty, you've got a relatively small country, about the size of Arizona, or about the size of Georgia. Italy is a little bit larger than the Philippines. Arizona has about 7 million people. Philippines, about the same size, has about 113 million, I believe, last I saw. Yeah, it's a camera. Say hello, Internet.
Hi.
Anyway, huge sections of the population here are poor and extremely poor. Camella Homes there, they're one of the big builders around the Philippines. And you'll see it. Kids, you see people sleeping on the street, sidewalks, and you'll see kids out begging, and no doubt about it, they are poor. You know, it's suggested don't give money, give food if you're going to give anything. There are tremendous needs here. The average wage is really quite low, and that's why a lot of Filipinos, a big part of their diet is rice and bread. Diabetes, obesity, all those metabolic health, all those types of things are increasing rapidly, like they are in many nations. I think the US and UK, one of the reasons they had such high numbers of viruses and deaths is because of their terrible overall metabolic health and their diets in such countries. Pollution. I think the rivers in Cebu were declared a few years ago, were declared dead, in that nothing can live in these rivers. They've had a couple of cleanup campaigns, and they've taken a lot of garbage out of there, but the infrastructure just doesn't seem to be in place to, you know, you can't snap your fingers, just try to clean a river up and expect it to become pristine overnight. It's going to take probably decades, and that if they can control the pollution. And I don't think the infrastructure is in place to control the pollution. I think the pollution continues, and you'll see it. You know, I've been watching a biker, a lady biker, about 32 years old. She's traveled around parts of the world, and right now she's going from South America, south part of South America, all the way up to Alaska. She just crossed from Mexico into the United States, I think, in the last couple of days. Itchy Boots is her name. She goes by Itchy Boots, and worth checking out. Brave lady. And but all the towns that I watched her go through in parts of South America, mostly Central America when I found her videos, and Mexico, she goes into all these towns and through these towns, and they all look really quite clean, and I am surprised. And I made a comment. I said, you know, gosh, I wish the Philippines streets and towns could be so clean. And you know, if I was king, I would get the schools and churches and business and media just pushing. You know, take pride in your neighborhood, and the infrastructure has to be in place, obviously. But I don't know how many times I've been walking behind somebody, and they've got some trash, and they just throw it on the ground. And it's like, man, I want to say something, you know. It's like a lot more bicycles here. That can be good or bad. A little more road rage because so many bicycles out there, not really paying attention to the basic road laws like so many people out here. Which brings me to my next point, traffic. Friendly Filipinos. Traffic, if you've watched some of my other videos, and I've got a couple videos, one called anyway, Rushing Through Rush Hour Traffic. And maybe I'll try to find that and put a link to the end of this video. But it's chaotic. A certain percentage of people, they don't have licenses. Many of them aren't aware of the road rules, traffic rules. They share the road. There isn't too much road rage. There's some. If there's 2 lanes, they make 3 or 4 lanes out of it. And you know, they'll move over and let motorbikes by, let other cars by to share that lane. So it's kind of neat in a way how that works. Very few traffic signals, stop signs here. People just, they go from one direction, and people from the other side, they stick their nose out a little bit. Traffic stops. They go from that side for a little. And it's chaotic, but it works, and it's generally efficient. I had a couple other things on my list. Noise is going to be an issue here. It just depends on what you're used to. Loud motorbikes, and the Governor Garcia of Cebu province mentioned to one of the senators that they should pass a law and start shutting down, because more and more, you know, one guy hears a loud motorbike and says, hey, that's cool, I'm going to do that to my motorbike. And more be sitting someplace talking, you have to stop talking until the loud motorbike goes by. And you got cars and motorbikes with ship horns and truck horns and all sorts of things, sirens, trying to get through traffic. You've got dogs, and a lot of stray dogs running around, and other people's, a lot of dogs, a lot of roosters, because they still have cockfights here. It's a big sport. And lots of people with roosters, and those roosters make a lot of noise. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy. Hope to see you all soon. See ya.